We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Children are being taught political agenda rather than the educational basics. Crime is through the roof with no sign of abating. And even getting your morning cup of coffee is becoming a problem as supply chains crumble. Are these indicators on the road to a very bad outcome? And what can we do to arrest these troubling trends? Well, welcome to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. And on today's show, we'll be covering the major topics: crime, kids, and supply chain disasters. We have a very special show for you today. And later on, we'll be talking with Carrie Lucas on how the Biden administration is hell-bent on getting indoctrination front and center in schools. I'd like to take a moment to wish a fond hello to our listeners out there in Chester Springs, Philadelphia on WFYL 1180 AM. Thanks for being here. Remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. It seems that the world is experiencing major supply chain disruption. Goods aren't being delivered, there's a backlog at ports, and consumers just aren't going to be able to get the goods that they want. What or who is to blame for this epic mismanagement? And is there a light at the end of the shipping container? Well, to help us get some of those answers, we're joined by economist and author, Mr. Andrew Moran. Welcome back to the show, Andrew.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me, we're seeing these issues worldwide. What is the, as the Biden administration is fond of saying, what is the root cause?
Well, of course, the root cause is COVID-19 and all the shutdowns that occurred. But in the aftermath, it's the main thing is that everyone is demanding everything at the same time. You know, now that the economy is reopening, coffee shops need coffee, automobile companies need their computer chips, businesses need energy, farmers need their feed. So what's even more fascinating is that you have all these other problems also springing up in some of these key markets. So Brazil, for instance, is just coming off one of its worst droughts in 90 years and has seriously disrupted its soybean harvest. Now, soybean harvest, one of its major customers is China, and China is scooping up all the soybean supply that's around the world, leaving very little for the rest of the world. So U.S. trying to make up for it, but it's still not enough. Chile is another good example. It's one of the biggest the biggest copper producer in the world, but its production has declined 5% this summer. Why? Because of constant work disruptions. A lot of the workers, they're protesting. The unions are upset, so the supplies are keep being interrupted. And you have I think it was 14% down output from last year. So that's also another problem when they have all these stimulus projects occurring. And also, if I may say one more thing too, you have all these factors throughout the world occurring simultaneously. And back in the day, if you had a supply disruption in Chile, copper price would climb, let's say, a few basis points. Today, if there's a supply disruption in Chile, copper prices are going to surge 1 or 2%. So I find that interesting.
It appears to be the same problem globally, and yet globalists are choosing to lay their blame on their favorite bugbear. Why is that? Yeah.
I think the whole driver shortage is, as the British say, it's poppycock. I don't believe that whatsoever. But, there were, even before this whole energy crisis or this whole fuel shortage and apparent driver shortage happened, there were signs that Great Britain was going to endure an energy crisis because of falling inventories. I think in the UK, correct me if I'm wrong, about 40% of the nation's power is used from wind and solar and other renewable energy, if that's correct. And, the renewables have shown that it's not reliable and it's not enough to feed demand, especially in the post-COVID world. So the whole drivers thing is excuse. If it were the drivers, how come other parts of Europe, as you say, is going through the same problem? China's going through the same problem. In northern China, the region is going through rolling blackouts because they don't have enough crude oil and natural gas. And what are they doing? They're transitioning to coal. And that's one thing funny about Europe too, is that Europe is supposed to be this green energy haven. They're investing in all these renewable projects, but what are they doing? They're shifting back to coal just to keep the lights on, just to power households and businesses. So it's going to be a disastrous winter. I just recorded something for my Swamponomics column talking about the looming energy crisis, and it's gonna be terrible this winter if it's really cold in Europe and parts of Asia.
Yeah, it's one of those supply chain issues, especially in terms of fuel, because it's coming in a lot from Russia and Ukraine. Thanks to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that President Vladimir Putin managed to secure as a win from Joe Biden. Now, how is this supply chain specifically going to impact Americans, both in terms of what they can get and the dent to their wallets?
Well, companies they're already warning shoppers that you should get your Christmas shopping done now because the store shelves are going to be quite limited. Which you can see right now. You have the ship container crisis. It's such a huge premium. If you want to put your goods on one of these shipping containers, you're paying a massive premium, and then of course that cost is passed off on to the consumer, which would shock Jen Psaki at this moment. But also when it comes to building the shipping containers, you can't build it fast enough, and if you build it, you're paying a massive amount of price because steel prices are trading at all-time highs. So this whole it's gonna be quite problematic for American shoppers, not only around Christmas time, but from a lot of the estimates I've seen, it's gonna impact until sometime late 2022. So I guess you have to prepare and start stocking up now on all your Tetley tea and all your crumpets. You have to start stockpiling on now.
Well, you mentioned 2022 and obviously late 2022, specifically when the midterms are due. This really seems like a bit of a recipe for disaster for the Democrats in power. But as Ronald Reagan said, the scariest words in the English language were, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." But is there anything that the federal government can actually do to solve this burgeoning crisis? Or have they done enough already?
Yeah, that when you say that line, it also makes me think of the Milton Friedman line when he said that if the government were in charge of the Sahara Desert, there would be a sand shortage within 7 days. But there isn't really anything the government can do about it. I mean, prices are gonna spike. So the only thing I can think of is that the government knows best is to spend money. So I've been writing about for months now that the Democrats are proposing a fourth stimulus check. So perhaps President Biden is going to say, you know what? Cost of living is sky high. You're having trouble, paying the bills or putting food in the fridge. So we're going to give you another $600 check. So that's the only thing I think they're going to do. Aside from that, there's really nothing that they could respond to this, global issue.
What does the future hold for Americans, the near future? And you mentioned 2022, late 2022 for this to resolve itself. But in the short term, what's the situation?
I guess it's going to be bad. It's not going to be good. Because if you look at all the data, let's say you look at the PCE price index, you look at the CPI, the PPI, they're all sky high right now. They're all, the PCE price index is as high as it has been since May 1991. So that's not a good sign for the U.S. Economic recovery in the post-coronavirus world. So the main thing I would think right now, shortages are a problem, but when you get your hands on any of these goods, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. It's going to be so tremendous the cost, and it's only going to worsen as time goes by. And when Christmas comes, everyone's going to be demanding everything again, and it's going to be hard to get your hands on the latest pet rock toy set for your kids, because everyone's going to want it. So it's not going to look too pretty in the next few months. And then of course I think energy is going to be the top issue this winter. As I've said before, in the United Kingdom, they're having an energy crisis. China's having an energy crisis. The U.S., I don't think it'll be too bad in the U.S. because the U.S. has so much oil and natural gas. So, but still, I mean, it's still going to be somewhat of a problem. But overall, it's not going to be a great few months. So I think that line, brace yourselves, winter is coming. So.
Thank you, Jon Snow. And I guess the natural gas and coal that could support the United States depends heavily upon Joe Biden being willing to let it come out of the ground. Andrew Moran, thank you ever so much.
Now, don't go anywhere. Later in the show, we'll be talking about the school indoctrination system and how Biden's big spending plans are only going to make it worse. But before that, after this short break, we'll be back with Lisa K. Donna to figure out why Austin, Texas is gripped in a crime wave that just won't quit. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Who are we? We are Americans that believe in liberty. We are a project of the nonprofit One Generation Away. We are patriots who apply the founding principles to the issues of today.
And they keep moving the goalposts on us.
We are educators and commentators who love America and the Constitution. Who are we? We are Liberty Nation.